drama, and your freshman QBs. All that when we return.
Welcome in to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to all things Devy and C2C. Hosted by John Arrington and Aaron Wilcox. This dynamic duo brings you actionable strategies with player-driven analysis for your Devy and C2C leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in to the freshman QBs. Welcome to the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, Dynasty Coach A, joined as always by Aaron Wilcox at Aaron Wilcox 86. And as you can see, we finally joined forces with the great Andy Starr at A Star FF on Twitter. We brought Devy University to the Devy Devotional. We wrapped everything up, and here we are. Devy Devotional still going strong after over 5 years running. Everything's great. So we're hoping to bring the greatness of both shows to you guys, and obviously be more consistent. By doing that, have weekly shows. By doing that, we had to take a little break. Unfortunately, we had some companies shut down, had some other issues happen with other things, and here we are. We're trying something new. We are on a new YouTube platform now. So if you guys are watching this on Twitter or wherever you are right now, head over to Gridiron Ratings on YouTube. We're going to post the link, obviously, on multiple places. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're liking the video, helping us out, helping our buddy Jeff out, and helping out the pod. So I know it's going to be confusing. We got new faces. We got, we're in new places, but I promise you it's going to be the same great show. But obviously we got to check in with our boys. Aaron, it's been a bit. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm just getting used to this new format, which we are now hosting these podcasts on. But I'm super excited and grateful to have Andy on here. We have played in leagues together, competed against each other in C2C leagues, campus to can leagues. Now excited to share some of that knowledge and have some healthy debates here at the Devy Devotional. So, yes, just very excited to be back on with you as well, John. Grateful for being able to be on this channel and continue with our podcasting. This is awesome.
All right. Yeah. Andy, how have you been? And like I said, once again, it's been a bit, at least a month and a half, 2 months, something like that.
Yeah. We I think it's been like first week of March was the last time we went, but yeah, I mean, sucks that we lost the Devy University there, but I'm grateful and happy to be part of the Devy Devotional and moving forward with this. It's awesome to, have somebody to take over and get our content out there. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're just three guys that like talking about college football, so we would just scream it into the wind and don't really care if anyone's listening. But it is nice to be in a new home here.
Absolutely. So obviously we're not here to just toot our own horn, but we had some changes, so we do have to talk about it. So much has happened in the month and a half or so that it's been since we've done a pod. In fact, there's so much that we probably wouldn't be able to catch up on one pod. So we're probably skipping some stuff today, which is fine. We have plenty of time during the off season to catch up. But for right now, obviously the hottest news, the biggest news is Nico Iamaleava. Wow, I did not do that one right. Iamaleava. I still didn't do it. Nico I from Tennessee decided that he no longer wanted to be with the program, and so he decided he wanted some more money. Tennessee said, "Nah, dog, that ain't happening." And now he is on the outs, trying to find another job. And it seems like every other college is saying like, nah, dude, we're not doing we're not doing that either. It's kind of crazy. Obviously, we're in a different world now with the NILs and all that kind of stuff. But do you think was this a terrible decision for him to do? And B, do you think we'll see more of this happening in the future, or do you think that like schools are going to nip this in the bud real quick and then and take care of that? Andy, why don't you start us out?
Yeah, I mean, the Nico stuff has obviously been discussed ad nauseum, articles, Twitters, and rightfully so. This is really groundbreaking stuff in the new college football landscape. We've seen the NIL disputes lead to player departures like Matthew Sluka last year to UNLV, but this is by far and away the highest profile of an example of it happening. When the news broke last week that he was holding out, my immediate reaction was, what is he thinking? He played average at best last season as a whole, and below average at best when you look at his SEC schedule. And now he wants to be one of, if not the highest paid player in college football. It didn't really make sense for me to start with. He had nothing to leverage against Tennessee. And we saw the outcome after he played his hand by not practicing last Friday was that Heupel just dismissed him. And I think that was the correct move for Tennessee. And I do have a few reasons why, mainly based on Nico's performance last year. Out of all the SEC QBs that took at least 128 dropbacks, Nico ranked 7th in passing touchdowns, 8th in yards, 7th in completion percentage, 9th in yards per attempt, and 5th in NFL passer rating. And I get that he was only a redshirt freshman, and we could probably expect to see some progression, but you just don't go and demand a pay raise after a season like that. And now we're finding out that none of these other blue chip teams with question marks at quarterback have any desire to give into those demands either. So with the consensus here, when I say that overall it was probably a bad move, I think in the end he's going to end up on a worse team. And I believe when it's all said and done, he's probably going to be making less money wherever he's at too, because I think he was set to make 2.5, 2.6 million this year at Tennessee. So I think that number is going to inevitably go down depending on where he ends up.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, what are you thinking about this whole thing? You think anything's going to change from this, or do you think it's just a really poor choice from Nico here?
Yeah, I don't know if we have all of the information is probably the issue there, because I do think that Nico is likely overreaching or overplaying his hand, and obviously just we got the blowback from that. But who knows? Maybe Tennessee didn't fully come through on some of their promises NIL wise. We don't exactly know what was going on behind the scenes there, but it does seem a little bit greedy. And like Andy said, it's not like he was elite last year, but at the same time, I mean, still pretty productive, still showing enough flashes where I could see why teams are interested in him. I mean, being a 5-star or former 5-star recruit and showing some of the athleticism that he has thus far. Tennessee maybe not doing the best job of developing, at least for the pro game, some of these quarterback prospects. I could see where maybe Nico was already interested in leaving, and he's like, basically, give me the money or I'm out. Like, I have all these. There's other good teams out there that want me. Now, is he going to get the money he's looking for elsewhere? That's a question. But I think as far as some landing spot predictions, there's interesting places out there for Nico. Nico could certainly land at Ohio State or a high end program like Oregon, even USC. Does not really have a proven quarterback yet at this time. You could say the same thing at Alabama. And then UNC is also, I think, another one. I believe Andy even tweeted out Bill Belichick, eating his popcorn or having his binoculars out there or something like that. Bill Belichick might be interested in a little bit more experience because, I mean, at UNC, I'm not convinced that any of those vets are any good. And they have an interesting freshman quarterback, which we'll talk about later in this podcast, but he is not proven. He's a freshman. So again, there are some landing spots for Nico. I don't think he's dead or anything like that. But it's not a great look altogether for him.
Well, from what I've seen most recently, I think I sent it to Andy earlier that it seems like a lot of schools were wanting him to lower his his value down below $1 million. And so if that's the case, and he was looking for 4 mil from Tennessee, now I'm not 100% sure. Since NIL isn't necessarily a school thing, I mean, I'm guessing he still has some of those deals at the very least. I mean, I'm sure maybe there's going to be some contracts broken or something like that. Maybe not. I don't know. Since it's NIL, name, image, likeness, obviously it's his thing. It's not Tennessee's thing. but obviously he was asking for more money from Tennessee. So it's weird. Is he keeping that? What was it, 2.7 million or whatever he had, and now he's trying to get another million on top of that, and that's what the schools are talking about, or is he losing that 2.7 million and then now he's going to end up with 1 million when he could have had 2.7? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because that would be absolutely hilarious if he just fell flat on his face like that when it was all said and done.
I will say, and sorry, go ahead, Darren. All right, I'll go. But I will say, just in the defense of Nico, the market has been reset several times since he signed that $8 million NIL deal with Tennessee as a true freshman. And none of this stuff has been verified, but we're seeing reports of Darian Mensah getting a $4 million deal from Duke, or John Mateer getting $3 million from Oklahoma, or Carson Beck, who I know John and I have strong opinions against Carson Beck. He's getting $3.5 million from Miami. So if you're Nico and you're looking at that and you're like saying, okay, I was like the highest rated player, quarterback in my draft class outside of Arch Manning. I actually played last year. My team made the college football playoff. I should be getting more money. If Carson Beck, who couldn't even take Georgia to the playoff, goes and plays for Miami and makes $3.5 million now, let's bump my salary up at least another $1 million. I get where he's coming from. The problem is Tennessee just didn't need to do that. They're like, we just made the playoff with below average quarterback play. Why should we give you specifically $1 million more when we could just, try out somebody else on our roster? Now, it's not to say that just anybody could be successful there, but I mean, Heupel had success with Joe Milton. I don't think anyone's, writing home about Joe Milton being a great quarterback. So it's not like he's going to be hard up.
You clearly don't know. You clearly aren't in the Twitter streets enough, because there's people out there that actually think Joe Milton's a thing still to this day.
I've been in the Twitter streets. I know what people think. They're still living in the 2024 preseason, but Heupel is an offensive guru. He's going to be successful with just about any quarterback. Now, he might have been more successful with Nico, and I think he wanted Nico because that was his presumed starter. But I think he figures, in Tennessee, the donors, the athletic director, they figure we can just move on and still be successful without him. We have the means to do so.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where as a school, you can't let a player, regardless of how good they are. And I mean, honestly, if he was better, maybe they would let him do it, but you can't let a player dictate what you're gonna do as a school. You can't set that precedence. And so I think it's just one of those things. And like I said, it'd be probably different if he was Arch Manning, or if he was somebody else that was, that actually went out there and crushed. But I mean, he was pretty mediocre. The only reason why he's not being crushed in Devy Beth right now is just because he's young, and he really hasn't done enough for me to be like, oh, he's absolute trash. I'm willing to give him another chance, but like, he has not been that amazing so far.
Yeah, the landscape in college football right now for quarterbacks, or at least high-end quarterbacks, a little bit murky. I think it's a great time to just go visit or revisit the status of the 2023 recruiting class, the quarterbacks in that class. It was stacked, right? We thought, oh, there was five-star quarterbacks coming out, and only one of the top 8 guys is still with his original team. Whether you like it, you don't like it, with NIL and all of that component now in college football, it has hurt the continuity that these quarterbacks have seen. I'll just go through the list real quick. Arch Manning is the only one who has remained with his team. I mean, you see Nico is now gone. Dante Moore, he is, transferred and had to wait another year. Jackson Arnold's gone. Malachi Nelson gone. 2 different destinations now. Rashada, that didn't work out. The NIL blew back on him right away. Aiden Shiles transferred, and Austin Mack transferred as well. So, and he hasn't had anything yet thus far production wise. So we're just seeing that the NIL era really does throw a whole nother wrench into it. These guys, there's a lot of different angles you could, I guess, spark conversations or get talking about how this can hurt players or at least impact players' development. But there's no doubt that what a once promising class can fall apart quickly. So when we get into the freshman quarterbacks here later, it'll be also very telling. Like we might love these guys right now when we're watching their highlights and whatnot in high school, but the hit rates ultimately are still not very high, even with 5-star incoming freshmen.
Absolutely. I was looking at it, when we were getting ready to jump on here, and I was just looking at previous years in Fresh Bath, and I'm like, well, that guy was highly rated. Nope. That guy was highly rated. Nope. And if it's not just Fresh Bath, if it's just they just don't hit at the rate you want them to. And that's why we've always said. I mean, really, all three of us have always been on board of like just don't go too crazy with these QBs. Like obviously you want to hit on the Caleb Williams. You want to hit on the Trevor Lawrences and all that, but there's so many Christopher Facinas and players like that, in the mix that that end up just. And that's not even a great example because he wasn't even that highly rated. But I mean, Malachi Nelson's, like there's so many other players that just truly fail that it's so hard to fall in love with these QBs. But unless you guys have anything else to add, we'll talk about why we love these QBs so much. No, we'll go ahead and dive into the freshman QBs here. Honestly, like all kidding aside, there is a nice class here. So yes, a lot of them are going to fail, probably even most of them. But there are players to be excited about, which we can't always say. So this is a good year for it. In fact, we have what a lot of people are calling one of the highest rated players that they've ever graded in this QB draft class. He is not the highest graded player for me, though, although freshman recruiting isn't exactly my 100% my forte. So I will see what Aaron has to say about that. Andy's pretty good with just about everything Devy and C to C, but freshmen are not his thing either. So we'll definitely lean on Aaron here for this one.
I've got some great information. I don't know what you're talking about, but I felt like that was a great lead-in talking about how horrible the hit rates are in 5-star quarterbacks, and now we're just gonna dive right into the 5-star quarterbacks for 2025 and how awesome they are.
This is why they will never ever fail because of this draft class. No, Aaron, how do you feel about this class as a whole? And then, is there anyone in particular that jumps out as the clear one, or do you have kind of like a tier of a few?
Yeah. Well, I will also say, because we just got done, kind of trashing the idea that we can really rely on these incoming freshmen to take over. And I just think that at the end of the day, even if you get one or two hits out of these like 5-star guys, that's huge. That's difference making for not only maybe a Devy or campus to can roster on the college side, but when they make it to your NFL side, that's huge to have that influx of talent coming in, because we know that in these leagues where it's a depleted rookie draft, you got to hit on these guys in college, and that's a higher probability bet for sure going with the 5 stars. And we can also further filter like who's going to see some opportunities right away, who is actually efficient in high school, who has high end talent with their arm, with their mobility, all of that. So there are ways for us to kind of filter down and see who is ultimately a better bet. And I will say that this freshman class, I like it. I like the quarterbacks specifically in this class. Now there are, I would say, between 3 and 5 guys that we should be pretty excited about, with more that could certainly slide into that top tier of players. So that's a pretty good class to start with. But I will say that the guy that is just separated for most out there who evaluate these freshmen coming in is Bryce Underwood, and he's going to Michigan. And the reason why that this QB1, pretty much consensus QB1 5-star player is just so awesome is because he's an awesome passer. He's a very efficient and accurate passer. He has excellent mobility as well. So he has the ability to provide not only a rushing floor, but definitely a nice ceiling with the passing. And he has the size that you want to see. Going to Michigan, I know it's not that sexy, but I mean, they just put out JJ McCarthy. It's not the same Michigan team right now, of course, that was a few years back, but we've seen that they've definitely taken a tick down, but they didn't have competent quarterback play. Bryce Underwood going to Michigan will provide that. And he's ultimately, we want good players, right? That's what we're going for. We're not only system drafting here. If it was that simple, just take the USC quarterback or Alabama quarterback, whoever, first every single time. But it's not as simple as that. Bryce Underwood has all the tools you want to see, and he's not just this toolsy guy who's super raw. He is nuanced as a passer too. So that's awesome to see. I'm a big fan. He is 6'3", 6'4", 200 plus pounds already. I think that even if it's not a super pass friendly, pass happy offense, we're going to be able to see enough out of him there to ultimately translate as a prospect.
Yeah, I like it. I do really struggle with the whole Michigan thing. And it's not even just Michigan as far, like, I really don't even like helmet scouting, but I just like looking at like what the actual situation is. And if we look at the situation that he's in right now, can we truly say that he's set up to succeed? I don't know that we can. Like they have not been the best at recruiting talent, and they've definitely not been the best at turning talent into future talent, or really getting the best out of their talent, I should say. And so that is tough. I just actually figured out that I have different responses for when you guys do takes and things. I can do like.
Don't do that.
No,
no, that was terrible.
Oh,
just come on.
No,
we don't.
Say, no,
we don't need the round of applause.
All right, now you can boo Andy. You can boo Andy.
Do I have a boo? I don't have a boo. We got to get a boo on here. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna do clapping for you. You mentioned JJ McCarthy. You forgot to mention future Hall of Famer JJ McCarthy, of course, when you mentioned his name, and then I would have put the clapping, behind that. But Andy, you said you were more than prepared for us. So what do you have for Bryce Underwood?
Well, yes. So I've been scouring the spring reports. For those that don't know, Michigan, they brought in Fresno State quarterback Mikey Keene. They also retained Davis Warren, and then also Jaden Davis, who was like a 4-star guy last year. Mikey Keene and Davis Warren are both hurt. They've been dealing with injuries, which is awful for both of them. But I think it's more exciting for us college football fans because we've gotten to see a lot of Bryce Underwood and Jaden Davis. And by all accounts from Sharon Moore and other coaches, both have looked really good during spring camp. Underwood in particular has drawn praise from the media as well. And I honestly believe, and this is my, just reading the tea leaves, seeing that this is like some generational prospect based on my 247 and on 3 prospect rate rankings. I think that Underwood is probably going to be the week 1 starter for Michigan. And obviously, John, you already mentioned it. The other question mark is, well, who's he going to throw to? They bring back like Samaj Morgan and nobody else, basically. Donovan McCulley, transfer from Indiana, is a guy that I've been hearing about a lot from that camp. But I mean, I don't think that in reality, I feel like, we should expect this offense to really stay with the running game, which they have been for decades, really. So I don't think they're going to shift too far away from that. The only thing I'll say in regards to that is, when a freshman starts week 1, I think it's a high risk, high reward, because we've seen freshmen start week 1 like Dante Moore, and it just didn't work out. And all of a sudden he has to transfer out and, take a sabbatical year on the bench at Oregon. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to Bryce Underwood by any means, but that's the risk you take when you roll him out there as a true freshman. Is he going to be prone to those mistakes? A team like Michigan, a fan base like Michigan, are they going to be patient with a guy like him if he goes out there and loses more games than he wins? I don't know, especially in this NIL transfer portal era. So Um, it's a high risk,
After
high
last
reward.
year, after last year, I think I think they'll take just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they beat Ohio State, I think they're going to be happy. But
Yeah.
um, I think Underwood will be fine by all accounts. He's been awesome. I trust what Aaron says. I really do think he is one of the best quarterbacks we've seen as a freshman profile in a long time. So I'm excited for it. I know I don't expect big numbers because, like I said, we're it's Michigan. They're gonna run the ball. They just got Justice Haynes, and that's just what they like to do. So they're gonna, which is good for Underwood as well. Like there's not going to be as much pressure on him, hopefully. But I do really believe that he will be the starter on week 1, given the setbacks that we've seen for the other quarterbacks on the roster.
I think we probably could have. I mean, not saying you're wrong or you're wrong to look at it that way. I think we probably knew that when they cut that check for him. What was it, like 8 million or 10 million or whatever it was? So I think we knew right then he was probably going to be at least like a week 4 starter, if not the week 1 starter. But it definitely seems like that's going to be happening. Like I said, freshmen are not my strength. I don't go crazy in depth with the analysis. I look at the school they're going to. I look at, them as a prospect, and I see him, as a 1.00 prospect. I also saw Quinn Ewers as a 1.00 prospect. So, I kind of take that with a grain of salt. And then just going to an area where like they just really have nothing. I truly hope that it works out for him, but man, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where he's like really gonna just truly be a Devy thing, and like he's not gonna be a big C2C name because like yeah, like he could be the greatest things in sliced bread, but he might score you 14 points a week or something like that. So it's definitely going to be more of a Devy hopeful. Is he going to turn into who we think he can turn into? And when that's all said and done, I do like that he's probably going to see the field early. I love that. I love getting an answer on that player immediately, rather than like Julian saying from a couple years ago that we're just maybe now going to find an answer. Get an answer on maybe not. Like we have no idea. That's what I hate. I hate that. I hate waiting for it. We'll talk about Keelan Russell here in a little bit. Ty Simpson, the same thing. He hasn't seen the field. He was a high 4-star, 5-star prospect, whatever he was. Didn't see him for years. I hate that. So I love that we're seeing Bryce right away. That being said, just because of Michigan and everything, he is not Fresh Beth's QB1. It's just it's going to be difficult to go up against the Alabama high 5-star QB going over there, and for Fresh Beth to be like, oh yeah, let's pick this Michigan QB over him. But Aaron, why don't you tell me why Fresh Beth is wrong in loving Keelan Russell so much and having him slightly ahead of Bryce Underwood?
I don't think it's wrong at all, for the record. I will say with the Bryce Underwood Michigan concerns, Andy touched on one or two guys there who are going to be receiving options for them. I will say that I'm pretty optimistic for a couple of their incoming guys, and it's not the consensus guy Andrew Marsh for Michigan, though I think he's okay. He doesn't really stick out to me, to be honest. But I think that Jacob Washington is an underrated incoming freshman for Michigan, wide receiver, and then also there's Jamar Browder as well. So kind of solid under the radar guys. I think that when you bring in a high end quarterback like a Bryce Underwood, that is going to attract options elsewhere too. Guys want to come play with that. So hopefully some transfers come in. They continue to recruit well, or start recruiting a little bit better at the wide receiver position. But you specifically were asking about Keelan Russell. I can't really argue against it. He's going to Alabama. We know what DeBoer has done for quarterbacks. He's done some pretty notable things. And as a passer, he wasn't quite as accurate as Bryce Underwood, but at the same time, he threw for more yards. That's for sure. More touchdowns, less interceptions. So that's of note. He didn't rush as much, and I view him when he did rush, he was pretty explosive. But Keelan Russell is not a Konami code type of quarterback. He doesn't want to play that way. He's like a CJ Stroud. Everybody or most people who scouted CJ Stroud, they kind of remember those one or two big time runs that he's pulled off. And they're like, wow, this guy's really athletic. If he ever wanted to, he could be kind of a rushing threat, but it's just not part of his fantasy game. I don't think that we should expect Keelan Russell to be a dynamic rusher. He's capable, but I think he's more of a pocket passer, and ultimately he can make most passes out there. His arm talent, it's pretty solid. I think his accuracy, his consistency there as a quarterback is also solid, and he's already uh, participating in practices, looking good. They're saying that that he's exceeded expectations thus far for Alabama. That's great because there's some uncertainty there. I don't know that he'll get the starting job, but Keelan Russell has has a pretty good shot to play this year as a true freshman for Alabama. And if we get a couple of years in the DeBoer system, we know how productive the Alabama passing game can be. He's got Ryan Williams there. He's still got some other good options. I think there's a lot to be excited about with Keelan Russell. And from a weapons standpoint, if that was your concern for Bryce Underwood, Keelan at least doesn't have those concerns. So that's a positive.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Keelan. I've heard some good things out of spring practices, but I know Andy's got us covered there. So, what have you been hearing about Keelan, and how are you feeling about the player?
Well, actually, I believe Ty Simpson was named the starter either today or yesterday. So that it should be a done deal at this point. Which, if you listen to the Devy University earlier in the year, I told you to buy Simpson for no other reason other than he'd be the QB1 in a DeBoer offense. But so if you did that, congratulations. But I know that some people in our space were convinced, or at least predicting that Russell was going to be the day one starter. It's just really hard to do that as a true freshman. We've already talked about Underwood. Him doing it day one. It still isn't a done deal for him either. And just at any level in college football, we rarely see it unless there's some sort of an injury involved or something like that. I'm just going on a little bit of an intuition here. And I know I've read some good positive things about Keelan Russell as well. And I'm not pressing any sort of panic buttons or anything, but just reading between the lines of what DeBoer said about Keelan Russell, he uses phrases like, "Oh, we see flashes of why he was, rated so high, but he also wants to see some consistency." And also you're hearing things about Austin Mack, who was actually mentioned earlier when we were talking about the 2023 class, someone who's made huge strides in taking care of the football. So to me, it kind of feels like Russell might be entering the season as QB3 on the team, which again, I don't want to press it. I'm not saying like Russell's dead or anything like that. That's ridiculous to even think. But if you're hoping for him to be sprinting out the gate, that's not what's happening right now, which you are seeing with some of the other guys in this list. And it's, again, these are freshmen. These guys are still in high school technically. So we're playing with some of the best Alabama, like one of the best programs in college football. So it's not realistic to expect somebody to just walk in there and be, Heisman Trophy candidate worthy immediately. But, based on what I've been reading with some of the other guys at the top of this class, I would be more comfortable passing on Keelan Russell. Certainly if somebody likes Keelan Russell over a guy like Bryce Underwood, I would certainly go that way. But there is at least one other quarterback in the top 5 that I would be more comfortable with above Keelan Russell at this point, just based on what I've been reading anyway.
Sure. I will say, and I mean, it's more reading between the lines, and it's just completely subjective here. This is not fact by any means, but everything that I've read about Keelan Russell is kind of like he's new, he's brand new, and like he needs to learn the offense, like that kind of thing. But then almost everyone, whether it's the coach saying something or whether it's a beat writer saying something or whatever, it's like, but holy crap, like they can tell that he's going to be that damn good, or at the very least, I mean, no one can guarantee that, but at the very least, he has the talent to be that damn good if everything clicks. But they're just saying, like, he doesn't understand the offense well enough. He doesn't know everything. Like one of the actual clip, or one of the quotes from the coach, and I should probably look it up rather than butchering it, but basically one of the quotes was paraphrased to say, uh, Ty Simpson knows the players. And like that was basically like all he said about Ty Simpson. It wasn't like any praise about his game or anything. It was like he knows the team and he knows the players. And it's like, oh great. So like he's been there. That's why he's the starter. But that's what we expect from these 5-star, these high-end programs, these Power 5 programs. We expect them to start the incumbent. We expect them to start the more experienced guy. Look at Texas last year. Look at Texas the year prior, when they should have been starting Arch Manning the entire time, and yet they don't care. They just want to make the playoffs. They want to not possibly lose a game and things like that. So they stick with the incumbent or the more experienced player. And I think that's what we're going to get with Alabama here, but I don't think it's going to last long. I don't think anyone truly believes that Ty Simpson is a thing. If Ty Simpson was a thing, and Andy, this is not like you made the right call. Go buy Simpson, because now he's labeled a starter. You can sell him for quite a bit. So that was a great call. But does anyone out there, or do we really believe that Ty Simpson is actually going to be a thing? I mean, he couldn't beat out Jalen Milroe, and Jalen Milroe is Jalen Milroe. So I just I'm not convinced, and I really do think when it's all said and done that Keelan Russell will get that job before the end of the year.
I just want to, sorry, Aaron, I just want to caveat a little bit of what I said. Just, coach speak is coach speak. Some coaches are going to like pump up their guys no matter what. Doesn't matter what they were doing. Other coaches might say, hey, this is where this guy can improve. And it's all a motivational tactic, and nobody's right or wrong. So for me, and you guys have already called me out, I call myself out. I don't know freshmen, but I just read what I read and I go off of that. And honestly, like when it all comes down to it, it's the play on the field that really makes my decisions. But you're absolutely right. Like as far as Ty Simpson, no. I think we already saw what he could do. I think he had a spot game against USF after Milroe had kind of a down game in 2023. So they put in Ty Simpson and he looked awful.
I will give a little credit to him because I live in Tampa. I went to USF. I live in Tampa. I'm 20 minutes away, and I remember that day like it was yesterday, just because of the QBs that got in the game. But I remember it was a torrential downpour. Like, I'm not even kidding. There was no lightning. So the game, actually, I think there was a lightning break at one point, but throughout the game, it was just rain. So it wasn't like they had to stop the game or whatever. But I'll give all of them credit that like no one should have been throwing a football in that kind of weather that day. But all that being said, there was obviously other opportunities for Ty Simpson to win that job, and he never did.
Yeah. And go ahead, Aaron. I really don't have anything else to add on Ty Simpson.
No, you're good. And at one point, I was a big Ty Simpson guy myself. I still roster him in a league. I'm not really trying to go out and acquire him very aggressively at this point, but I think it is a move that has a little bit of upside if somehow Simpson just shows us what he's truly capable of within an offense and a coaching system that I think is very quarterback friendly. But Ty Simpson has 50 career passing attempts and he has 0 touchdowns. It's like the guy, he has not shown to have a whole lot flashes wise thus far. I get that some of those situations may not have been the best ones, but he's been in some blowouts. He should have been able to get some a little bit better production, I would think. So at the end of the day, Keelan Russell, whether it's the beginning of the year, end of the year, filling in a game or two, I think he's going to get enough opportunity to be the future there at Alabama. I understand that the spring reports might not be giving you a lot of reassurance yet, but sometimes we just got to trust in that talent and just wait it out a little bit. There's no red flags. That's the good part, right? He's there. He's impressing. They're saying that he is ahead of schedule. Those are all positive things, even if they're still, like, oh, well, this veteran's the presumed starter, or, we like, his leadership or whatever. But I like that at least there's no negative pieces coming out. Those are the things that we really don't like to hear at all. But I assume that was Bryce Underwood your QB2 then, John, or did you have another guy up there?
I actually have somebody else ahead of Bryce as well. And I'm actually questioning it because I think I've heard some bad things. You guys could probably help me out here, but I actually had Hussein Longstreet ahead of Bryce Underwood as well. Going to USC, we know what Lincoln Riley's been able to do for QBs, and a lot of times we go the narrative street and it doesn't work out. But like I say, I don't know that Lincoln Riley is actually a great like molder of QBs, but I think that he's a great eye for QB talent. I think he's proven that, and we have to give him that kind of credit. I don't know that he actually truly makes them better once he gets them, but I do think that he knows what he's looking for. And so, you give me a guy who is a high 5-star prospect going to USC, and I'm going to fall in love with that.
Okay, fair enough. It's like the chicken and the egg thing, right? It's like, well, was their success they went on to become good quarterbacks because of Lincoln Riley, or were they already good and he just kind of fit a system around them, or whatever the case is? But there's no doubt that it is a positive thing for a quarterback going to a USC led offense. It's not perfect. We've seen that. We just saw some guys kind of flop there. I mean, over the last few years, and we haven't seen, for
You don't
example,
think Miller
with
Moss is a stud?
yeah, exactly. It's like Miller Moss kind of, he wasn't, to be fair, he was not a Lincoln Riley guy, right? I mean, he's just
Yeah.
kind of, that's who they had. They didn't have the NIL, whatever, to get a top end guy. But Malachi Nelson was a whiff. Like of late, maybe not the strongest track record, but you go back, he has had a lot of hits. And you know who Hassan Longstreet reminds me of? Caleb Williams. He really
Ooh.
reminds me of Caleb Williams. And I'm
Oh,
not
so
saying
he's a
that it's a
bust.
perfect
No, I'm just kidding.
so bust. No. Well, if he lands on like a team such as the Bears, yeah, maybe. But no, Longstreet, and it's not a perfect match, but okay, he's a 5-star quarterback, so I get the interest there. He's a little bit smaller than some of the other guys we talked about so far, but he's at least 6'1" and a half, 6'2" is what I've seen, almost 200 pounds. And he has some really good rushing ability. I like his scrambling ability, his mobility, and I think that he passes at all levels of the field with skill. So I'm not saying that he is a Caleb Williams. My first comp for him was Russell Wilson. I thought that there were some similarities there too. He's maybe a little bit taller than Russell Wilson was, but I think he's a sturdy quarterback. Ultimately, he's going to pack on some more pounds there, sure. But he's another one. We've talked about guys thus far where they might have opportunity, if not year one, year two. And I think that's the case here with Longstreet. Like even if Maeva ends up winning the job, keeping the job all year, because I think he's okay. Like I don't think he's trash. I don't think he's amazing at this point, but I think Longstreet could get on the field this season, and if not, probably the next season. And he just seems like that next guy up at USC, which is hard to bank on in this transfer portal era, the NIL era. But I think that Longstreet is a good bet ultimately. And that's what you're doing when you're taking these freshman quarterbacks. I mean, it's just kind of trying to play your probabilities and taking a bet because nobody really knows, which of these guys are going to hit at the end of the day. We can make some educated guesses though. And I think Longstreet is a good guess.
Yeah.
I think so.
And I like Longstreet too. And I don't know what news you've been reading, but the recent stuff out of USC, Lincoln Riley saying he's further ahead than most freshmen are at this time. His work ethic has been highly commended. He's attending meetings and workouts that, aren't mandatory, he's benefited by that because he lives nearby. And like Underwood, he also has the benefit of not having a 5-star quarterback on the roster to compete with. Jaden Maeva, as Aaron was talking about, is a presumed starter as of right now, but it seems like Longstreet is progressing quickly and could challenge him in the fall. Now, I doubt he starts week 1. We've already talked about how rare it is for freshman quarterbacks to start at all in a season for a team like USC. But it's certainly a situation where if things continue to fall in the correct places, I think we could see him taking, meaningful snaps this season.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My wife was saying something to me and I was not listening to you at all, but I will say that I loved everything you said. And no, I honestly, I could have been misremembering what I had heard about him. For some reason, I thought I saw something about him not showing up for the spring practice, not like not showing up, but like not showing up as like talent wise and things like that for like spring practices or spring games. But maybe I'm just like thinking of someone else or whatever it is. Uh, Fresh Beth has been a fan from basically day one. I When I first saw it, the way that people talked about Bryce Underwood, I just kind of expected that once I put all the numbers in, that Bryce was just going to jump to the top. And that's not to say that Fresh Beth is the end all be all or anything like that, but I just kind of expected it and it didn't happen. And so then I was like, well, how crazy are people going to say I am if I don't have Bryce Underwood at 1? I mean, yes, it sounds like you guys are saying maybe it's a little crazy, but maybe it's not that crazy.
Well, we've already discussed how, you know, in solid, like how there's no consistency across these 5-star rankings. Like you're just trying to find that 20%, 30% hit rate in this group of 4 or 5 guys. So if you want to say it's Hussein Longstreet, or if you want to say it's Keelan Russell or Tavian St. Clair, who am I to argue with you? Like it's, you can make an educated guess, but at the end of the day, all these guys theoretically have the same odds of being the one that transcends, 1 or 2, let's say.
That's actually a good transition for us here, Aaron. Tavian St. Clair is the next player on my list. Obviously, I think at this point, although I've heard some things about him, maybe they're incorrect as well, or maybe I'm misremembering, but I've heard some things about Tavian here as well recently, and maybe he's actually getting a little more look than we thought. But how do you feel about him as a player, and are you worried about just is he ever going to touch the field?
Yeah, there has to be some of that worry there, just seeing how these Ohio State quarterbacks, they get solid recruits and they sit for a couple of years and maybe they don't get their opportunity. It's like Devin Brown. And for a while, we were kind of worried about that with McCord. And obviously now with Lincoln Kineholtz and Julian Sayans, like who's going to get leapfrogged? Who's never going to get their opportunity? It's probably one of those guys is never going to get it there at Ohio State, right? So Davian St. Clair at 6'4", 225 pounds, 5-star guy. So he's got that build that you really want to see. He has the passing accuracy that you want to see. He's not a risk taker. He's pretty safe with the ball. And he's not a big time scrambler. I think he's similar in a lot of ways to Keelan Russell, honestly, where he has some ability to be a mobile quarterback. It's just not going to be how he wins the game. So looking for the next Konami code, like the next Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels. I don't know that you're getting that with Tavian St. Clair. I believe I've seen that comp out there. Um, I just don't see the Jaden Daniels. Like, it's really hard for me to throw out a comp for Tavian St. Clair because, again, mobility, it's there, but he's not a scrambling threat. And I thought his arm was fine. I didn't think it was generational by any means, but at the end of the day, he has a lot of the tools you're looking for, size and the opportunity too. I think that's the other thing that really is intriguing with a lot of these quarterbacks coming in this class is that they could start within the first 2 years of being on campus. And we can't always say that. Sometimes they're stuck behind a guy like even in Quinn Ewers at Texas. It's like kind of a tough landing spot in some ways for Arch because he has had to be patient despite him being a talented prospect and a player. So at the end of the day, I think Tavian St. Clair does not have quite as tough of competition there at Ohio State, but we'll see how it plays out. There is slightly higher chance of him just never getting on the field there and making much of that opportunity.
Do we know? I don't know how. I know you do a pretty good job, Aaron, of like paying attention to recruiting and stuff like that. But do you remember? Was Ryan Day involved with the recruiting for like CJ Stroud and Justin Fields and players like that? Because it has not been great if just thinking about like who they've had more recently. When you're talking about your Devin Browns, you're talking about your Kyle McCords, your Taven Sinclairs, your Julian Sayans. Like you have a lot of like high end prospects, and obviously like, the jury's out on Julian Sayan, the jury's out on Taven St. Clair. We can't say anything about any of those players. I think we can definitively say that Devin Brown is not good at football. But I I just wonder, and like I do not know this answer, so this is not me acting like I know this. I just wonder if Ryan Day is not exactly the best quarterback evaluator, or whoever his team is.
Yeah, he's not a great developer. I mean, CJ Stroud, I believe, was a 2020 guy, and then Justin Fields a 2018 recruit. So,
Yeah.
and Ryan Day started in 2019. So that's when he became the head coach at Ohio State. But
Right.
Okay.
regardless, even if he was involved in some of the recruitment of both those guys, it's not like we can point to him and say he is the QB developer. He is the
Yeah.
whisperer that made
He's
these
definitely not
guys
the
great.
whisperer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's been such great wide receiver play. In fact, in recent years, you could argue that the quarterbacks have vastly underperformed with the context of the awesome receivers they've had there. So,
Yep.
yeah, it doesn't give you a lot
Kyle
of confidence.
McCord struggled at Ohio State with the receivers that they had, and then went and dominated at Syracuse after that. So that's not really a great showing for Ohio State and Ryan Day and all that. But that's a
Yes,
complete tangent. I just
That
thought about though that I was
that's a
like,
good
man,
tell.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a
that
good
was a
tangent.
strong use of the word dominant. I will say at Syracuse, but
Well, I mean, as
For
dominant as you
standards,
could
right?
be at Syracuse, I guess.
okay.
Hey, he's my sleeper in this draft. Don't be hating on Kyle McCord now. He's going to
St.
be.
Clair. I think he was 3 for 3. They put him in the fourth
Aaron's
quarter
not
of that
having it. He
spring.
wants to get right back to the St. Clair talk. He's like, no,
Yeah,
we're
enough
done
of
with
that
Kyle
McCord
McCord.
talk, right? But Tavian St. Clair, I will say, the people who think that Tavian St. Clair is the next Justin Fields, I think he's closer to McCord as far as the mobility goes. Not that okay, he has better mobility than McCord. Don't get that mixed up. But I'm just saying that he is going to be more reserved in the rushing game than Justin Fields. But even Justin Fields, he was kind of caged up a little bit as a rusher in college too. I mean, he
I think
was
they're
not
looking at the size. They're looking at the 6'4", 225 frame, and they're saying, "Oh, Justin
yeah.
Fields." It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
he's not that athlete, bro.
No, but potentially a better passer, right? A little bit more nuance. We'll see. I don't think that
Sure.
Ohio State did Fields much. I don't know. They didn't really help his development because we've seen him struggle at the NFL level. But I will say that Tavian St. Clair, he was inserted into the fourth game or the fourth quarter of that spring game. He went 3 for 3 right away, touchdown pass with it. It's something against, maybe the third string guys. How much do we take away from that? It's at least not a negative, right? That's what I said earlier as something that I always look for is I just don't want to see like, oh, he's throwing a bunch of picks. He looks really inconsistent. He's lost out there. His arm is weak. Those are things that we saw out of Julian Sand, or at least the weak arm. And I know there was some wind and whatnot last year in the spring that really just made people sour on Sand, but people were questioning his arm right away. Like, ooh, this is the guy who had this rocket arm and all the camps and whatnot in high school. Wasn't really sticking out on the college field. So we'll see if that's true. I don't know, but at least we're seeing some positives for Tavian St. Clair thus far at Ohio State.
I'll just jump in. Yeah, I mean, they did have their spring game last week, and I think he did play in the first half as well, and he did have a couple of interceptions in the first half. But and I don't know if you were looking somewhere different than me. I don't know, but he did clean it up big time in the second half, going 10 for 12 for 117 yards. But yeah, I mean, by all counts, this competition is between Julian Sand and Lincoln Kienholz right now. For what it's worth, it was Kienholz who started the game. I know he started out slow, and Sand kind of had the better start. But if I'm just looking at their stats, I think Kienholz might have performed a little bit better. Like I said, St. Clair looked a little bit raw, to be expected, throwing a couple picks, but settling down in the second half is what you want to see. Ryan Day has said that the game's moving really fast for him right now, but he's getting better every day. So to me, it feels like St. Clair probably in a similar situation. Not a similar situation, but it seems like he's going to be probably the QB3 on this team. So that worries me in a sense to like, okay, this is what happened with Devin Brown. Like we were all excited about Devin Brown, and all of a sudden he was the third string quarterback as a true freshman and obviously never had a chance at Ohio State. you obviously can't just say that's what's going to happen to Tavian St. Clair. I do like what I've been reading about Lincoln Kienholz right now, or Kienholz. It seems like he's maybe, playing spoiler to anyone who thought Julian Sane was just like the foregone conclusion at starter there, which would be great, I guess, and fun. But it's still a freshman, We're not worried about these guys right now. They're still high schoolers playing for the first time. They've had 15 practices, most of them. So we're doing our best to, read through the tea leaves and dice up what these coaches are saying and try and figure something out. But at the end of the day, it's guys like Aaron that we need to listen to, because they've actually evaluated the prospects. But we're not going to truly get the answers until we actually see some play on the field, which we want to see as freshmen, just for our own self-interest, but a lot of times it doesn't happen.
And it's happening less and less because of NIL and transfer portal and all that. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see it less than we used to even, and that really sucks. But moving along for time purposes here, I have two players that are essentially tied. One of them is on the show sheet. One of them is not. But let's talk about both of them quickly. We have Deuce Knight out of Auburn. I've heard a lot of good things about him recently. In fact, I've heard possibly some rumblings of starting and things like that when it's all said and done. We'll see if that actually happens. And then I've also heard some pretty good things, albeit from Colorado, about Julian Lewis, who I essentially have tied in Freshbeth to Deuce Knight. But I've heard some pretty good things out of him as well. And so, Andy, why don't we start with you this time? Do either one stick out, or does obviously Deuce Knight is probably the bigger name, but like I said, I essentially have them tied.
Well, I haven't been reading too much on Julian Lewis, but as far as Deuce Knight, Auburn, their QB situation is kind of interesting in that Deuce Knight is one of only two scholarship quarterbacks on the team right now, and their other scholarship quarterback, Jackson Arnold, suffered a leg injury on Thursday last week, so he didn't even play in the spring game, which meant Deuce Knight got every first-team rep on Saturday. Hugh Freeze, their coach, described his performance as solid and okay. So he's one of those coaches maybe that doesn't want to hype up his guy as much. He did have a couple interceptions, but Freeze said that was completely out of character for him, and he hadn't seen that from him in the 15 days that they have been practicing. I think when it's all said and done, Knight is still probably going to be behind Jackson Arnold in competition for the starting quarterback. But, as of now, it's a two-man competition. So as long as they don't add some big splash in the transfer portal, which you really can't. I mean, there's not anybody besides Nico, and Nico's not going to go to Auburn. So it seems like he's probably going to start as the backup there. And if you're looking at all these freshmen quarterbacks, he has one of the best supporting cast wide receiver. Obviously, you can't compete with Ohio State in that department, and Alabama with Ryan Williams has a good supporting cast there. But he's got Eric Singleton, Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, and Perry Thompson. That's a pretty good top four wide receivers if you're just looking to surround a quarterback with a lot of.
Oh, sorry. That was my fault.
I was like, I must have
all this stuff.
I must have said something John liked. I was like,
no, I thought it. I'm still getting used to all this technology over here, and there's a preview and there's a live thing, and I thought I had it on preview, and I did not. So
you were trying to boo me. I know. I know what's going on. But that kind of wraps up what I was going to say. He's got the weapons there. This just probably isn't going to be his season. But who knows? Jackson Arnold's already shown that he's susceptible to be getting hurt. He's shown it in spring. He's shown it at Oklahoma. So he might get some opportunity here. We don't know.
Yeah, I've definitely pretty much given up on Jackson Arnold. So I would like to see Deuce Knight as soon as possible. But we also know that doesn't always happen. Aaron, how are you feeling about Deuce or Julian or both?
Yeah. So I don't like to just throw out bold statements or anything like that, but I think that he, besides Bryce Underwood, maybe has the most natural talent in this entire quarterback class. Um, I mean, Deuce Knight is awesome as far as that high end athletic talent. He was a two-time state champion in the long jump and one-time state champ also in the high jump. Very athletic guy, and on the field that translate. He's a dangerous rusher, inside outside the pocket. But we gotta also be able to be at least competent as a passer, as an anticipatory thrower, as an accurate thrower at the end of the day. Otherwise, you're just not really that interesting as a quarterback at the NFL level. We've seen Anthony Richardson and now Jalen Milroe and those guys. If they can't put it together as a consistent passer, they're just going to struggle to consistently get opportunity, maybe even get drafted in the first place, whatever. But Deuce Knight at 6'4.5", 206, at least those are maybe outdated height weights. I mean, he might be even thicker than that, but as a five-star guy, there's a lot going for him there. Andy nicely highlighted some of the weapons there at Auburn. This is not the Auburn team of old. There is certainly a lot to be excited about with Deuce Knight. He just needs to clean up his game. He's already been throwing some picks there in the spring. Again, maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it is getting thrown into this. But I agree with Poinam17 in the chat. Deuce, biggest boomer bust.
That's Soup.
I
That's
Oh yeah,
Soup from
yeah,
the
Soup.
WU.
Very great Soup. I agree. He's a boomer bust guy. His completion percentages, his senior season in high school was 58%. Not great. He's supposed to be dominating in high school, and his junior season was 53% completion rate. That's not what you want to see. The rest of the guys we were talking about, Tavian St. Clair was what, 68% his senior year. His son Longstreet was 66. Keelan Russell was 66. Bryce Underwood was 72 ish. So yeah, we're seeing a big drop off with Deuce Knight as far as the accuracy, but as far as throwing down the field, he has a great arm as well. So I will say that the raw talent, the physical traits are there for Deuce Knight, and so is that opportunity. I still think that Jackson Arnold is going to have a say in that starting position. I think he wins it, honestly, over Deuce Knight, but I also am just highlighting how raw Deuce Knight kind of is. It's not that he is not a great talent. And I should probably go back to say, like, Tavian St. Clair, maybe I undersold his mobility just a little bit because looking back at his like rushing production in high school, he had 9 rushing touchdowns his senior year. That's still pretty good despite only rushing for like 200 some yards. So, but yeah, and the other guy you told or asked me about was Julian Lewis at Colorado. He's getting a lot of hate, or at least not a lot of love. So I don't know if I'm confusing the two. He just nobody really wants to talk about him in this space. He's a little undersized as a quarterback, but he's a very productive high school kid, and he reclassified and skipped a senior year, and he was still over 10,000 career passing yards. So that's pretty impressive.
Multiple
And at the end of
championships as well, right?
yeah, and like career what 69% completion percentage, nice. And I thought he had nice enough arm strength. I don't think it's elite by any means, but in some ways, could he be like a discount Bryce Young? Absolutely. And at Colorado, there's not a locked in quarterback that I feel great about long term there. I think he could start even as a true freshman. So we're kind of getting a theme here. There's lots of opportunity for this incoming freshman quarterback class, and Julian Lewis certainly has that. So I don't know if Dion's going to stick around there long term. What's going to happen there? I can't predict that part, but I will say that Julian Lewis has as good of a shot at getting some opportunity as a freshman as most of these guys do. And there is the underlying production, and I think there's enough there with his game, his mobility, his accuracy, where I could see Lewis ultimately being a really nice guy to draft, and you don't have to draft him very early in most of the drafts, which is a big plus.
Yeah, and Soup also says, do you guys think Antoine Hill at Memphis or Malik Washington at Maryland can win the jobs as true freshmen? Honestly, I think we're going to get into that on the next pod because we are at our limit. We're trying to stick around the 1 hour limit. So Soup, stick with us next week, and we probably will dive deeper into this, or we definitely will dive deeper into this freshman QB class because I have some names that I like. beyond what we've already talked about today. But we're trying to stick to this hour, especially with the three of us. We're getting used to this. We're gonna make this all work. We're not gonna be randomly throwing up random noises and things like that in the middle of the pod and all that kind of stuff. We're all getting used to this. So I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys in the chat. Hollywood was in the chat. He was actually pretty, well, I don't know if he was happy. He's probably dealing with some grief and stuff. He's a big Tennessee fan. He said, good riddance to to Nico. He said, just get him out of here. Probably a little bit of grief going through those 5 stages, but eventually he will come out on top. We love you, buddy. This has been great getting back to podding, getting back to talking about college football. And Soup says, oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. Count me in. So we will see Soup on the next pod as well. Hopefully he'll be there asking us good questions, because we will talk about Malik Washington, who is definitely an interesting player who I have tied with another exciting player that I'm actually looking forward to starting, but we'll leave that as a cliffhanger for next time. Because this is all brand new and everything, I do not have an outro or anything to play right now, and I can't even take us out of here. So I'm just going to say we appreciate you guys listening. It's been awesome to be back in your ears. Obviously, let people know Devy Devotional is back. They were never leaving. They just took a little break. We're back, baby. But for now, we're going to go ahead and cash out. We will see you next time.